Welcome to Flying High with Cam,
Yayo.
a podcast where I combine two things I love.
This is insane.
Interviewing the most successful people I know
You're the baddest guy in town.
while flying helicopters.
Engine failure.
Fly with me. I want to hear your stories, learn from your experiences, and build a community. This is Flying High with Cam.
All right, welcome to Flying High with Cam. I'm actually really excited for this podcast today. We're flying to Page with the girls, and I'm going to take this opportunity to get a different perspective than we usually do with entrepreneurs. They say behind every successful man is a strong woman, and that's certainly the case with us. So we have one of my best friends, James McCabe, his wife Lex, and then my wife, Alyssa, in the helicopter. And I'm just excited to dig in. I've had 2 of my 5 business partners get a divorce in business. And, you know, obviously the strain of business is hard. It's not saying they got divorced just because of business, but as you're growing, there's a lot of balls to balance as you're working through, you know, taking care of your employees while making sure that your wife's happy and on the same page with you. So before we get into business, I wanted to tell the story about how we met James and Lex. We used to call Lex Cardinals. We used to call Liz High School because, you know, that's just back in the day. So, James, where did you meet Lex at? And I want you to tell the story of that first night at McDonald's to start this off.
Well, Lex went to school with my cousins, like both my cousins, from my mom's side and my dad's side.
Yeah.
And one of my girl cousins and her were mutual friends and tried to introduce us when we were in high school. But I had a girlfriend, she had a boyfriend, but we went to the back of QT over on Greenfield, you know, to hang out. We met, and like there were some like good vibes, but you know, we were dating other people at the time.
Yeah.
You fast forward, I left for 2 years. I come back.
Wait, you guys met before the mission?
Oh yeah, we met in high school, and then I remember, she might not remember this, but I remember this.
300.
One of like my highest scoring games in all of high school. I had 17 points in the first half. She was on a date with a guy that went to my school, and I saw her walk in while I was doing warm-ups, and it was like a little extra motivation to
Stop it right now.
Yep. And so one of my best friends in high school was dancing for the Suns, and I was going to a Suns game on a date, and I texted her and said, hey, like, I'm going to be at the game. I hadn't seen her since I'd gotten back. And she's like, cool, I'll come say hi. And next thing you know, Lex comes up and brings us like some shirts and stuff and says, hey, sorry, you know, Kayla's dancing on the other side. She couldn't come over here, so she sent me over. And, you know, we'd recognized each other and then ran into each other a couple weeks later at MCC. I was there to play like a pickup basketball game, and she just got done with a workout.
Yeah.
And so, you know, then she did like the OG slide into my DMs on Facebook, added me on Facebook, and sent a little message, and the rest is history.
I just love our nicknames. So back in the day, and this was like when we were 21, James and I met each other in high school. James hung out with my older sister, Heather. And so, like, you know what, you're 2 years older, James, right? Or is it 3?
Yep, 2.
2 years older. And so it was like, you know, he's a little bit older to hang out with, but just saw James hanging around Austin, who's a good buddy, my sister, Heather. But after the mission, we started playing basketball together. And basically, it's just like never left each other's side since. And so as we started to, you know, date girls and whatever, like nicknames would happen. You know, I'm embarrassed to say one of my girls' nicknames was Taco Bell. And I think Lex gave her that nickname. But Lex danced for the Arizona Cardinals, so we called Lex Cardinals. And it was so funny. Whenever I text Lex, like, it doesn't happen very often, but I always search Cardinals first because I never remember changing her name in my phone. But it's so funny. And then Liz came around. And I think, James, you came up with that name, high school, because when I met Liz, she was still in high school.
Yeah. Graduated, though, by the time we started dating.
Well,
all right?
you know, we were in her graduation.
Kinda.
So that's kind of our story coming up. But what I want to do around this podcast is, you know, I meet a lot of guys who obviously are within their first 3 to 5 years of business. And I want to have Lex and Liz give like pointers to entrepreneurs of how to support their spouse, but like more importantly, like the tips that you can give guys like James and Cameron of like what to do. And so one of the hardest things for me as I was, growing my companies was to balance this aspect of like, you have 100 employees demanding all your time, all your attention, all your energies going into this. You have this pressure to provide. Like how can entrepreneurs show up better at the home, or like what's the hardest part when you're seeing your husband or spouse go through that? And I don't know if Liz, you want to take it, or Lex. I can bounce different questions between the both of you. I know you're talkative. Liz is all nervous in the helicopter being as it is, but like how have you balanced that, Lex? We'll start with you. With James, feels like seeing that stress from him, but also like trying to support him and help him along the way.
I think something that comes to mind is, especially when James was first starting out in our business, he was traveling all the time, and he still does travel a lot. But people have always asked me, like, how do you do it with him traveling? And I kind of figured out early on to just not fight it. It was easy to, when he was gone, to be mad that I didn't have help, or to be like, worried, like, what is he doing? Where is he? And just kind of like not trust the process. But as he traveled, I kind of just decided, like, hey, I'm going to make the most of it at home, and like I can do this without him, with my kids. And and also he was really responsible with keeping us in the loop. Like he does this still now, and I really appreciate it, but he would always like call us in the morning when the kids woke up, like before they go to school. He'd FaceTime everybody, and he'd FaceTime before bedtime, just to kind of stay connected and chat with us. There really would never be a day that he wouldn't talk to us. So I think for me, like, just trying to figure out how to work around him traveling so much, and be okay with it and happy with it and proud of him for being out there, away from his family and working hard. It took a little while for me to get there, maybe like a year, 6 months, but
yeah.
Now, like, I enjoy when he travels. I think he enjoys it because he knows, like, I have his back at home.
That's cool. But one thing that stood out to me as I look at your guys' relationship is I feel like you guys have always done a great job of like doing, I don't know if it's quarterly planning or weekly planning, but I know sometimes I'd call James on like a Sunday, like, hey man, what are you up to? It's like, oh, Lex and I are just down at the office, like planning. And that's something that Liz and I we've just started to do. We did our first quarterly couples trip last 2 weeks ago. And I wish I would have had that tool like when I was growing the business. And so like, what do you contribute? Like you said, being on the same page, like what did you guys do? Was it monthly planning? Was it yearly planning? Like what did that look like?
Yeah, I think as you start a business, or if you're an entrepreneur, I think it's important to know that like just because you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't necessarily mean your wife is too. And entrepreneurs are ready to like risk it, and high stakes, high rewards.
Yeah.
And just because that's how you are, maybe your wife, you kind of need to make sure your wife is along with you and on board and sees the vision. And oftentimes entrepreneurs, like, the vision's big.
Yeah.
And so something that we did, I think we did well, is that just like your business needs systems, like your family and your personal life, needs the same type of systems. And so we always made sure that we'd always go on a date every week. But one of the dates, like the first of every month, that very first date that we went on for that month, we would do something like kind of a planning date. We'd go to the Keg. That was our spot.
Yeah.
We'd bring our laptops, and honestly, we'd kind of shut it down sometimes. We'd be there and we'd talk for a couple hours and work through things. But we have something, we call it a RYG report, and we use it in business and in our personal lives, but it stands for Red, Yellow, Green report.
Okay.
And basically each of us would keep a note in our phone of like what things red, like what's hot, what do we need to figure out, what's in the way for us.
So like give me some examples of what that is. That like family and business, and like would James update you on the business? Because that's one thing that, unless you can jump in any time here, like I feel like I was a poor communicator, and so half the time Liz wouldn't even know what's going on, and then like I'm over here stressed out. So what types of red things would be happening that you guys would go over?
Well, I would say that her reds would have to do, oftentimes the business stuff would come out.
Okay.
Like, hey, what works for me is like I don't feel like you've been as present as we would like. Like
She's
we need
telling
an
this to
upgrade.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that could oftentimes into like, well, let me tell you what's going on. You know, I just lost this person, or we had to, this, or, whatever, and it would provide context.
Yeah.
And it tried to provide context, not justify. Like,
Yep.
well, let me tell you what I have going on, and then it's just solution-based. Like, when something is red, that means it's a problem. Like, it needs fixed. Like, we view it as, like, this does not work for us to continue.
Yeah.
So what's red for us? And then we could just come up with that plan.
That's cool.
Typically, that was more at the home front, though. Like, I would say 80% of that planning meeting was like, what do we want? Like, what's going on this month? And that could look like anything from carpools to travel schedules to deadlines, in the business. And so I might, be at the office early or late or whatever that looks like. But the majority of it was her and I and the kids focused.
That's cool. So was it, like, in your opinion, James, was this more of like a planning meeting for her, or was it for you? Like, did it help the business side, or was this like a box that you would not necessarily check, but that you would do so that like everything stayed organized on the home front?
Yeah, well, listen, Cam, you and Casey have introduced this concept of this weekly planning.
Yeah.
Like the same benefits, I would say, apply from just being on the same page, and I think the foundation of that is communication.
Yep.
Like as much as anything, like we're just talking what worked for us last month, what didn't, what's coming up this next month. Like it just felt this organization. So if we had to go get after it in the business, and or it was a heavy travel month or whatever that looked like we at least knew what general direction we were going on. Like I don't know, like what's the pink line up there you're following right now to get to Lake Powell? That was our version of like somewhat staying on path to the direction we're going and making sure that we're heading where we want to.
I love that. Lex, you said like not all women are entrepreneurs, or maybe as entrepreneurship as like your husband might be.
Yeah.
And as I've consulted people more and more the past year, that's what I've noticed the most, is that a lot of people's goals are different from their spouses. And that was one of the greatest benefits, in my opinion, from the quarterly, planning session that Liz and I just went on, is that especially because we had a big event of the Sell of Green Mango last October, and like really Liz and I didn't know like what the next path was, but like I didn't know if I was gonna like stop working completely and just hang out all day with the family. And Liz, so it was like we weren't together, but we weren't on the same page for the first time, probably in business or in our relationship, and it felt really like uncomfortable. And so I don't know, that was the biggest benefit for me of going on that quarterly trip, is like, hey Liz, like this is what I'm trying to accomplish next, are you on board? And if you aren't, like let's talk through it and get on the same page, because that's where I feel like the friction happens between your relationship with your husband or wife, when one guy's trying to get to the next milestone and maybe the other spouse is like happy with where they're at. So
yeah, I'd say too, like be wherever you're at. Like that originated at the kitchen table, before we had kids. And then that looked like at the couch after kids went to sleep, and then we upgraded to Chili's, and then we made our way to the keg, and then it looks like off-site quarterly meetings or staycations or something. But like it doesn't need to be like, just make it happen would be my advice.
So you guys would do weekly, or would you or monthly?
Monthly would be more.
Well, we do monthly, like a meeting where we went through things, and then we were really dedicated to weekly date nights.
That's
and
cool.
just connecting and being together. And then I feel like I had to be pretty intentional not to talk about work at every date night, and just like make it fun, like make it something that was kind of a release for James, something that he could look forward to and enjoy, and not feel like I was gonna pepper him with work questions.
Yeah. I like the RYG, red, yellow, green. Was it ever hard to like find the categories, or did you guys like start with the kids, start with activity, then go through activities, go through hobbies, go through goals, like, or was it just like, hey, whatever comes to mind?
Yeah, so the yellow is something that's like just like a stoplight. It's either cautioning you because it's heading towards red, or it was red and it's trending towards green.
Okay.
And then greener wins. Like, hey, this is working. I want this to keep working. Like, hey, that date night was really fun, or hey, whatever that may be. So we didn't really go through categories, and I think that would be a good idea, because in business we would go through divisions.
Right.
You know, okay, let's go through the marketing division and the sales division, you know, and we'd go through different categories. I like that idea. I don't think we ever really followed that structure on our personal side, but it would just be like, what's most important right now? That could be personal layered, or that could be, you know, we'd set challenges, goals. Like, that's when we'd be like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm really focused on clean eating right now. Please don't bring any fast food home, or please don't, you know, whatever that could be.
I like it. All right, Liz. When did you feel most disconnected from me? If either something that I was doing or that we weren't doing as a couple?
I think when we were starting out, we had the benefit of being like young and dumb, and like not knowing any better. Like, I think it's cool to get James and Lex's perspective, because it's almost like they started their journey after kids, and not started their journey, but like this new entrepreneurship journey has been like with a family, which I think is even harder to do than when we started without kids and without that responsibility. But I think that worked in our favor at the beginning, and so it was just kind of like, oh, this is what we do. This is, you know, it was easier for us to be on the same page. And then as time has gone on, I would say this last year was the only time that I feel like I was disconnected from you, or we were disconnected from each other when it came to like the business side of things. Because like you were saying with the sale, I don't know that we had any expectations for what it was going to be, but I knew for sure you weren't going to like take a year off, as you were saying. But I did think that you would maybe slow down. And so I feel like before our planning session that you were talking about, we were probably the most disconnected that we had been through this whole business journey, just because of that, because we were on the same page to grind and to build Green Mango to like what our goals were with it. And then when it got to the point that it was like, okay, the stress of this isn't worth it. No matter what it sells for, it's not worth, you know, you killing yourself from stress. And so it was like we agreed on that. And then when the sale came, it was like, okay, the stress is gone, but almost like, what does that next chapter look like? And you and I talked a lot about seasons of life, and like what James is saying, there's a season of life where you do your weekly planning on the couch or at Chili's, and there's a season where you get to travel and do things like that. And it almost felt like with the sell that you had moved on to this next season of life, of not retirement at all. Most of what you still do is work, but just a different type of work, a stress-free and more enjoyable type of work, which I love that for you. But the season of life with our kids and stuff we haven't moved on from that. We're still very much in the season of raising kids, and not in that, you know, realm of when the age where you retire. And so I feel like getting on the same page with like the fact that we are kind of in different seasons and figuring out how to work together, and me supporting you in the season that you want to be in. You like literally got me at my worst up here.
That's why we're taking your mind off it.
I love to fly. And so I feel like that, yeah, just this last year was the time that we were probably the most connected because of that. And it just comes down to communication again, and making sure that you're taking that time to make sure that your spouse knows, you know, how you're feeling, and how what they're doing is affecting how you're feeling, and vice versa.
What's the best way that you feel like, if you're giving advice to an entrepreneur, of how to communicate with, like, is it daily updates? Is it, I mean, one thing that I've enjoyed as I've taken on this like challenge this year to get 12,500 steps in each day, like that's one thing that I've loved with us at night. It's like, hey, Liz, I gotta go get another couple thousand steps in. Like, you want to come with me? And it's allowed us to like have time together, just walking around the neighborhood and be able to communicate. That's some of the best advice that I would give someone right now. Is there anything that comes to your mind on like how spouses like to be communicated with, or how they like to be updated, or how often, and what that looks like?
Well, I think everybody is different, and I think figuring out like what works for you is the best way. I mean, everybody's love language is different. The way that everybody likes to receive and feel love is different. So I feel like first is figuring that out, and how,
How do you figure that out? Like, well,
I think just communication again, like saying what is green, like what is working good, what is green, these things work for me. I like this, let's keep this going. And communicating, or like, no, I don't like this. I don't like how you only communicate once a week. I want to know what's going on every night. And then I think that looks different in every relationship. But I think the other part of like what works well for you and I is we kind of like hold each other to a high standard. And I like that. I feel like we've gotten good and comfortable with not letting the other person like slack off and like hold each other accountable. And so it's almost, if you're getting your steps in, I don't have a step goal, but it's like I want you to be that same person for me to like continue, because you set these high goals and you want to always achieve them. Like, it makes me want to do that with my goals and the things that are important to me. So I think like communicating that, making sure that your partner knows, like what James was saying, I'm trying to eat healthy, like don't bring home fast food or whatever, like communicating that, and then hold each other to that high standard of like, this is the goal you set, so I'm going to help you get there. And the nightly walks work super well for us, but also we have like found a good rhythm with just like expecting a lot from each other. And I laugh, like when we were in Thailand and I had a 10-mile run and I was really nervous because the humidity was like 98%. And I was kind of nervous about it, talking about it all morning, that I was anxious, I didn't want to go. And I was like, I'm just going to get started. And Cam goes, if you come home before you've hit 10 miles, you have no place to sleep tonight. And it's like, it was funny, but like as I was running and like dying, I was like, in the back of my mind, I knew, obviously it was a joke, but it was like, I can't come home before I hit 10 miles. Like I can't go home and say, oh man, I only did 8, like I couldn't get to 10. And so I just think that holding each other to a high standard of what you expect can really help like both of you find joy in the relationship.
So if someone's listening to this and it's like, I think it's cool that you've leveled up, I mean, is it just a matter of like continuing to be that example? Because I can only imagine like maybe one spouse is wanting to be healthy and the other one's like, no, I'm just not in that season right now, like I'm going to do me. How do you get each other on the same page? Is it just by leading by example on that, or I don't know, you got anything with that, Lex or James?
I think
No, go ahead, Liz.
I think that it's important that like you have to meet them. You can't just expect them to constantly be meeting you. Like if you're wanting to do this and you just want your spouse to come along and them constantly meeting you, eventually they're going to get tired of that. So whatever it is, like business, eating healthy, working out, parenthood, whatever it is, like there's got to be some like give and take there. And
like on the quarterly trip, like I'm not saying you weren't all about it. I think you liked the trip idea, but like I felt a little hesitancy, like, oh man, like what's he doing? And Casey told him about this quarterly planning, like what's he gonna try and do? If you would have fought me on that, like I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give like the people that are listening that have that spouse that's like, dude, I've tried to level up my wife, or the wife's listening, is like, dude, my husband's a deadbeat.
Well, that's where you're good about like adding in the trip aspect for me. Like you added in something for me. Okay. You let me plan where we stayed. Like you're like, I think this place would be, I think this state would be really cool. Like pick a resort you want to go to, pick somewhere, because I love to travel. Like that's what I love to do. So for you, it's like you don't love to travel as much. So you're like, I really want to do this quarterly planning meeting, so I'm going to let her do the planning. Like you gave me something to be excited about. Not that I wasn't excited about just spending a weekend together, but it's like you gave me something to be excited about, that I got to plan where we went. I got to plan kind of our activities or whatever we were going to do. And then in there you got, what you were hoping out of it, which was the weekly planning side of, or the quarterly planning side of it.
I think if you have the common theme of progression,